Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Before you post the meeting, do you cut it off so that you start it where you want it to be started? Thomas?
No, when we're rolling, but it's kind of what we do also on the council meeting. We have a little bit more control on the council as to when mayor usually calls to order, and so he unmutes his mic, and then we let everything else turn on.
Thank you for clarifying.
Do we have Councilmember Dovey on the line yet?
Not yet. I'm trying to reach him.
Thank you.
Happy 2020. Happy 2-2-2-2-2. Did I say enough twos?
Well, you got to get a 0 in there, but close. 2
Yeah.
2 2 2
Yeah.
0 2 2.
Yeah.
Close.
Forgot about that little 0.
I know.
Also, President Kochma and Deputy Mayor Honda, now is 5:01. Should we go ahead and get started, or should we wait a little bit longer?
Well, I think you should start.
Yep.
Okay, very good then. Okay, I call this FedVac meeting to order. And with me, we have committee member Erica Norton. We also have Council President Linda Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Susan Honda. We also have Council Member Lydia Asefa Dawson and Jack Walsh. Welcome, and welcome staff. All right. Well, let's see. First of all, do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. We are moving on to committee business. The first item is item A, approval of summary minutes for January 25th, 2022.
Hold on. I need to find it. Just a second.
Sure.
Oh, Councilmember Dovey's connecting.
Ah, welcome.
Okay. I move to forward the proposed. Wait a minute. Request for proposals. That's not it.
It's the minutes.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for it. I just didn't see it. Sorry.
I can make the motion.
Am I there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Dovey.
Well, thank you. Sorry I'm late. I was having a hard time. I was up at the mountain
No,
today.
that's okay.
Awesome.
That's okay. You did
Had
not
to
miss
get-
anything.
I had to get down to coverage. Okay.
All right. Well, I
Good to
move.
see ya.
Thank you. I move approval of the summary minutes January 25th, 2022 as is written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Dovey, can you hear us? Mr. Dovey, can you hear me? I think we just lost committee member Dovey. Oh, he's back. Mr. Dovey, can you hear me?
Okay.
I just hear you. I just want to hear your vote on the minutes.
Hello.
He's in his car.
Yeah, I can see that. We have a connection problem. No.
Chair Tran, you can
Yes.
come back at the end of the meeting and ask for any votes that anyone's missed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, we are moving on to item B, request for proposals, City of Federal Broadband Planning Study. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, committee chair, committee members, council members. Tim Johnson. This request is directly related to the council's leadership on its Tech Hub program. This RFP was one of multiple transformative actions that were identified in the action plan that made for successful transition for communities into a tech hub. Today's proposal is an RFP for a consultant to examine the assets and opportunities in Federal Way in order to enhance and improve our broadband for our residents and for our businesses and general overall community. It is being paid for by two grants. One is from the State of Washington Department of Commerce, and then the other portion comes from the city's American Rescue Plan Act Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. I'm reminded that the state agency is the Community Economic Revitalization Board. So how did we get to that number? It was working with the state agencies and other cities in our research that identified what the framework of this cost would be. This registered at $75,000. Timeline is identified. If it's approved here tonight, we ask that it goes under the consent agenda at your next city council meeting, March the 4th. And we will be back in front of you with the consultants who have responded and the selected consultants for your approval at your second meeting in April, and then begin commencement of work shortly thereafter through the end of the year. A copy of the RFP is enclosed. It will go through the normal channels that we put it at, such as the Daily Journal of Commerce, the Puget Sound Business Journal, to catch the regional, as well as on our website to catch everybody that would be looking at this. And of course, we would be assisted by the state of Washington and all of their resources through the Community Economic Revitalization Board. So it will cast a large net at a very low cost. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Committee members, council members, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I read through it quickly, and I think I've already asked this before, but I just want to be sure. So is this for us to look at providing broadband to the city, to the people who live here and businesses?
Not yet. There's a kind of a multiple element that occurs here. We're trying to get a handle on the assets that exist in terms of broadband services, both the last mile, the middle mile, and the backbone, the three components that make up broadband. And who's offering those services in Federal Way, and at what speeds, and at what cost, and accessibility, availability, and consistency of service. And once we understand that, then the options will be provided by the consultant back to the council for fact of findings of what they occurred, and then with recommendations to the council of the direction you would like to proceed. So there's a lot of work to go through this. This is a heavy lift, but this is the first time in the history of this city, over 30 years, that we've ever done this before, ever performed this kind of research. So yes, it will get you there eventually, but it will take us some time.
And where is there? What is the ultimate goal of the study? Is it so that we can incorporate this into what the city's doing, or just?
Thomas, would you like to enter into this conversation, please, since he's the IT director?
Sure, Tim.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember Norton, this is something that we've looked at. What has come to light with what the school district was kind of battling with during COVID. A lot of the challenges that they had with kids being able to remote learn. And there's been some other instances throughout the city that have shown that there is some spots within our city that we don't provide, or that there isn't adequate high-speed internet available. The purpose of the study is to actually get data on all of those locations and to figure out what exactly is provided, where exactly it's provided, and if there is a need for the city to do something like this. It might not make sense, or it might make perfect sense. But that's where we need somebody that's actually in that industry to look at those data points and then see if it makes sense as part of our plan or our roadmap. So I hope that.
Okay, and so, because I'm asking because I'm new and I'm trying to catch up here. So is this going to be something like what Tacoma did, where they were providing cable services for a while, that kind of thing? Is that what you're looking into? Is something like that, or just seeing where there's less coverage in our city, and then asking the cable providers or the broadband providers to extend out to those areas? Is that?
Yeah, so we're not there yet. We're not there with providing service, and that's what the purpose of this study is to kind of look at all those things to see and we definitely want the broadband providers. We want Comcast, and we want CenturyLink to be a part of this process, or Lumen now, because that's who's our incumbent provider. So we want to see if the study shows that there's only one area in Federal Way, and that's the only thing that's keeping us from being 100%, then great. Maybe we can just work on with them to take care of that. But okay. It might prove something else. And so that's where it's one of those things where we don't know what we don't know. And so by having them take a much closer look, very data driven and analytically at the providing the options that our businesses and residents have, and then by who and by what, and what packages and what options they have, then we'll have a much better understanding and see if there is a need for something like Tacoma, or maybe there's not. So that's and we want the providers as part of this process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you, Mr.
You're welcome. You're
welcome. Council President Kochma, go ahead, please.
Thank you. think, Tim, you've answered this already. I think this is all wireless, correct?
It will
Wireless
look at a
connection.
variety of different, oops, I'm sorry, I'm off. It will look at a
That's
variety
okay.
of different elements from 5G on, as well as cable, coaxial, fiber. Yeah.
So my understanding is I think that 3G is going to go away with the past, correct? So new phones are all going to be 5G, correct?
Correct.
New cell phone, new
4G,
devices.
5G.
Yeah, so 4G, 5G. Thank you. Yeah, 5G. One goes out into the hinterland and one's in the city. Yeah, I forgot which is which. But I
They're a combination of both.
think this is going to be real valuable for. Okay, thank you. So I think this is going to be real valuable for us in attracting any major corporations.
Absolutely. It's significant for us to be out in front. And the research identified that with each one of the case studies that was performed and provided in the research, that without this, you really didn't have success. But with it, you did have expedited success towards achieving the goal of becoming a tech hub.
Yeah, well, this is exciting. Thank you, Tim.
Is there any other questions? I don't see any hands here. All right. If there's no further question, I will entertain a motion, please.
I move to forward the proposed request for proposal to the March 1st, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I can second that. Any other questions? Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I still couldn't hear Mr. Dovey. Committee member Dovey, can you hear me? I'm gonna ask Council President and Deputy Mayor Honda to guide me. What's the process I should do here?
You only need
you
two
can-
votes.
Yeah, you're fine. You just move forward. You can ask Jack at the end how he votes on each of the issues, but at the moment he's unavailable.
Okay, let's proceed with that. All right, we are moving to the next item, and that is bid acceptance RFB 21-012 and fund project with ARPA allocation. John Hutton?
Hello, good evening, Chair Tran, Council President, Deputy Mayor, and Council members. I'm here tonight with an agenda bill in front of you. Give you a little bit of information on the slide replacement and play structure bid. And the policy question is how would Council like staff to proceed with the Federal Community Center slide replacement project? So I think you have quite a bit of the background. You know that in 2017, staff began to notice significant cracking on the foundation of the staircase. We were able to consult with a structural engineer, Ade Bright from Bright Engineering, and Mr. Bright developed a plan for us to do a temporary repair on that. It lasted quite a long time. Unfortunately, staff noticed cracking reappearing in 21. In February of 2021, we brought Bright Engineering back out, and unfortunately we had to close the slide feature. At the same time, the play structure in the shallow end is also in desperate need of replacement. It is failing, and so those are two very important draws to the community center. They have revenue impacts, and so we went out to bid with this. There's a very limited amount of companies that actually can perform this work and build a gigantic fiberglass slide like that. There's only 3 or 4 worldwide. We were able to get one bid. Unfortunately, it came in much higher than we thought. We came to the council back in November and asked for $500,000, which we were granted. So thank you from ARPA funds. We have applied for a $250,000 grant that we're very hopeful that we get full funding on that $250,000 grant. Unfortunately, the bid came in at $1,189,705.37. It's higher than we anticipated. Most of the concern is the mounting of the slide into the pool deck foundation and also the play structure in the bottom of the pool. They're anticipating that it's going to be difficult and expensive to repair the damage that they'll likely have to do to make the installation happen. So we are proposing, we have options for you. The options to be considered are authorize staff to request an additional $484,791.60 of ARPA funds to complete the slide replacement project, or authorize option 2 would be to authorize staff to request $484,791.60 from the general fund, or option number 3, do not replace the slide and play structure at this time. I want you to know that we have met with Finance Director Steve Groom. Obviously, Brian Davis came over and put his eyes on the project last week with the staff. And so with that, I also want you to know that I have Community Center Manager Leif Ellsworth on the line. If there's technical questions that I'm unable to answer tonight, I think I can answer most of them. And I also have Autumn Gressett, who helped us with the bid documents and things. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions that you might have from Steve Groom or myself or our staff, Leif or Autumn.
Thank you, John. I do see the hands of committee members, Norton. So go ahead, please.
Hi, Mr. Groom. Thank you for that. I looked through the information that was sent with the packet, and I see that there's these, it looks like water slides and stuff. Is that what you're having built?
Yes,
or is it just like a kind of, it looked like kind of like Wild Waves. Is that what it's?
Yes, there was a slide there like that, and unfortunately, yeah, that's been removed, and so now we just have a pool there, and then there's also a small play toy for littler kids in the shallow end of that same pool, and that's our leisure pool, and that needs to be replaced as well. So those are the two elements.
So did the company that gave the bid, I didn't read their bid, if it was included, did they guarantee to have it last for a certain amount of time, like 20 years or something?
There's an expected life expectancy on these of 20 to 25 years minimum.
Okay.
And with this particular staircase configuration, we think we'll do even better than that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council President Kochma, go ahead.
Thank you. Is it ADA accessible?
No, there's no way.
I don't believe it can be without putting an elevator in. That would be the only way you could do it.
Okay, I'm just wondering, for some of our children that are physically challenged, if they would be able to use it in any way.
They would be able to, but they would take some assistance getting up the stairs, depending on their level of disability.
Sure.
If I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
Go ahead.
Just to note that we do have a 0 depth entry for the play structure itself. So there are about 3 to 4 elements that are on that level that they are able to access for ADA. The larger slide, no, there will be no access to that. But for the smaller play structure itself, yes, the initial 3 elements on the ground are accessible.
Okay, so this time we're going to make sure that they've treated the rebar with the correct.
Yes, and it won't be concrete. So that it was actually the concrete that failed in there, and then some faulty rebar that wasn't coated properly with galvanized.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. This is the first I've heard that the play structure needs to be replaced. What is the cost to replace the play structure?
Leaf or Autumn, do you have the breakout of the
I can
slide?
pull up the breakout, but I don't believe that the bid, because we went out to bid, and when we requested to go out to bid, it was for the slide and the play structure because both are failing. Our request for bid, the price includes both of those. We didn't ask them to itemize one or the other. So we would have to go back.
Have you told us before that the play structure was needed to be replaced? All I've heard was a slide.
Yes, it's been failing at the water level and below for quite some time as well. And if you go look at it any time, you'll see that it is in pretty bad shape. Just the years of wear and tear with chemical on that, with all the chlorine and stuff. It's just a harsh environment for anything like that. Although the new toy should last longer too.
Our previous discussions.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Our previous discussions were around the slide and the play structure, correct? When we came to council in July, we discussed both the slide and the play structure. Our conversations were heavily around the removal of the slide at that time, with the understanding that we would be coming back with an RFB to go out for a slide and play structure. And the RFB that we brought to committee in November, along with asking for additional funding, included that language to replace both.
Oh, okay, well, I'll have to go look because I don't remember hearing anything about the play structure needing to be replaced. So I'll have to go back and look. How long did this last? The slide and the play structure, how old are they?
We opened in March, just about 15 years, because we opened in March of a little short of that because we've been closed for a while now with the temporary repair failing. But we opened in March of 07. We opened the facility.
Back when these were put in brand new, obviously you must have thought that the cost was a lot less than what it is now. Is that correct?
I honestly don't recall, because the facility was built with the slide as part of the overall facility. So I don't know that the individual elements were called out, and they kind of built the building around the slide. The slide was in. Then taking it out was challenging because the building was built around the slide already being there.
Our estimated cost came from when this project started, when we initially consulted with a Dave Bright and realized that we needed to replace the slide. We did reach out to vendors to find out where that price point would potentially sit. That was several years ago though. So the $500,000 was from a previous understanding of what costs were at that point in time for a slide.
I apologize, Council or Deputy Mayor. I thought you were talking about the original slide in the original building. I didn't realize you were talking about that. So Autumn answered.
No, I was talking about the original.
Oh, you were? Okay, all right.
Considering how expensive this is, how long will it take for this to
$1 million.
You know, before we see the cost recouped on it? I mean, I realize that we have a lot of people that use it, but how many years do you think it'll be before?
I don't know that I can pin that down to a time frame. I can tell you that it's a major revenue stream because that's why people rent the facility for birthday parties for kids. They don't rent just to go swimming. They rent for the play toy and the slide. That's the big draw. That's what makes us unique. And you know, people, all the members and citizens that use the facility, they've been very patient, but they're, you know, they would love to have their big slide back. It's really fun, and it's it was loved to death. And we had, I don't know how many millions of people up and down that thing over the past 15 years. You know, a lot of people.
So now that we know how much it costs, and in 15 to 20 years, it's going to cost even more, do we put any money aside to replace it when it is broken, or does it come with a warranty for 15 years? What are we looking at? Are we looking at something to protect us from having to pay this amount again?
And I can talk a little bit about the construction of the slide. We asked for it to be constructed with some semblance of modularity. And so should the parts begin to rust and fail, we'll be able to individually take out steps, or should a column fail, then we would be able to replace a column itself if that were ever to happen.
And I can add on to
versus the entire structure.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I can add some financial context, because when this bid came in and it was $1.2 million roughly, I know that I'm rounding, but we had a $38,000 demolition cost. You know, we huddled up as a team and we said, you know, yeah, obviously you all can see that this agenda bill is requesting ARPA funds, and we did some creative head scratching, and we actually came up with 6 different potential ways to pay for it. And we end up coming back to ARPA, but I don't want you to think that we just gave a knee-jerk reaction asking for ARPA money. If we, now that we know that the slide is about in the neighborhood of $1.2 million, and it probably has a useful life of 20 years, well, simple math would tell us that we should be putting away $60,000 a year, and then escalating for inflation if that were the cost, if that was going to be a one-time thing. I think Leif just explained that it could have some modularity to it. But knowing that, we thought, well, okay, if we didn't have ARPA, what would we be doing? The community center itself has a fund balance, and it's there for surprise equipment replacement. You usually think of catastrophic things or roof replacements. It does have a $1.5 million fund balance, which is right exactly what its required fund balance by council policy is. So if we use that fund balance, then the next question would be, well, okay, great. Over the next 20 years or the next 3 years, whatever, we would need to have a plan to replenish that. Another option would be to issue debt. If we issue debt for 20 years of $1.2 million, we would have to come up with debt service of $60,000. And where would that come from, right? We could also do an interfund loan. We could do similarly. We could try to avoid some debt issuance costs by doing a loan between funds. But in order to cover $60,000 a year in a fund that has memberships and classes, one thing you have to look at is, well, would we raise rates? And to raise rates to be able to fund $60,000 a year, that's just impractical. In addition to the fact that they just completed a perfectly good rate study and did adjust rates, and so the next option would be to increase the annual subsidy from the general fund by $60,000 a year over the next 20 years. And in each case, whenever we're tapping the general fund or if we're hitting the fund for the community center, we would have to come up with a repayment plan. And the reason that ARPA is an ideal solution is, for one thing, it's available, and it's also one time, and it is designed to make a city come out a little bit more, not a little bit more, it was specifically designed to help cities regain financial stability. So we covered all of those options, and then we landed on ARPA as the most probable, the ideal solution that would help the city overall. I know that that's a long-winded answer, but I thought you should hear that so that you didn't just think, oh, we're just looking for the easy way out.
So
Sorry.
then you're saying that we're not going to be putting any money aside to replace this in the future because we don't have the ability to find $60,000 in the budget.
Well, I think now that we have the price tag, we can adjust our capital planning long term much more intelligently, so that we can timeline and look at the fund balance that we need to for capital. I think this is very helpful, actually. John, would you say that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fine to try and set aside some money going forward. In case this thing fails again. I think we're going to get a good long lifetime out of it, but it would be wise to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't heard anything about a warranty.
You said it was 20 years, I thought.
Expected life expectancy is 20 to 25 years. I'm not positive on warranty. I'd have to do a little digging on that to see what kind of warranty would be on that, unless Leif or Autumn may have an answer off the top of their head if they're looking.
Yeah, the warranty in the proposal was 5 years on parts and installation.
Wow.
You don't really expect fiberglass. What failed on the original slide was faulty workmanship, faulty concrete on the original contractor, Absher Construction, who we settled with at the time of, the city settled with at the time of construction. And so we got what we got. And that's a problem. Whereas this, this will not include those elements that the failed slide had, which was concrete and rebar. It'll be a different type of construction that's much less likely to fail.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee members, Norm?
Okay, so my next question is, I'm looking at the ARPA funding. Which category of ARPA funding will this fall under? And if it is rejected, how are we going to pay it back? Because I don't see anything. I mean, I know they expanded it at some point, but would this be under the water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure part?
This would fall under the lost revenue category, which City Administrator Davis brought to City Council recently, and he had included a placeholder because I think the gap that we're looking to fill is 484,000, and we did have this information at that time. This would be eligible under lost revenue because that's the category that gives cities the greatest latitude. It doesn't have to fit into broadband or water, sewer, or public health.
And okay, but it says due to COVID-19 public health emergency. So that is the part that you're talking about, revenue replacement for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to the COVID-19 public health emergency.
Yes, this is a service, this is infrastructure that the city would normally be required to provide. So it falls within the government services up to the amount of the lost revenue. That's correct.
Okay, and then so what if the feds come back and say, you know, you interpreted that incorrectly, we want our money back? How would that work if they said that you spent it incorrectly? What would happen if they came back and decided that this part of it wasn't spent in the proper manner? What would happen to us?
To answer your question, if there is anything that we spend that is found to be ineligible, the money would already be gone. We would have to repay it out of the city's general fund reserves. That's why staff is spending so much time scrutinizing the Treasury's final rule before we make a recommendation like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your concern.
Steve, I'm not sure that the lost revenue exception is understood by council. It's the city's total lost revenue, not specific items. And then there's a calculation that the Treasury has given us. Steve and others have, and the day beforehand, did a calculation, and we have a number by their own formula of, what is it, 14 million, Steve?
I think it's 14.5. You're right, 14.5.
In the 14.5 million. So up to 14.5 million, we can use for any purpose.
It's
anything
discretionary to the city.
It's discretionary to us. So there's another bucket. Is the stuff that you're talking about, where we need to tie it to a specific approved use.
Right, good information. Steve, I do have a question. If we are going to set aside $60,000, you know, so that 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we have to replace this water slide. Should that amount be a little bit more, given the fact that the inflation and the cost of the product, you know, 15 years from now, probably more than that?
Well, as you know, with capital budgeting, it's not that we put away and specific to every single project that's on the capital list. What we need to do is we need to be fairly intelligent about forecasting and spending on capital every single year with future projects appropriately priced. And this gives us a pretty long window.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Those are really, really good questions. Okay. If there's no further questions, I will entertain a motion.
I'm having a really hard time with this. Hold on. Sorry. It's not easy for me to do. Council Chair Tron, can you give your opinion on how you feel about this proposal, please?
Sure. Well, personally, if the money will come directly from the general fund, I will kind of reluctant to authorize the money. The fact that we can get almost $500,000 from the ARPA fund, I'm willing to go with this because it is an important piece of attraction that draw people in community, not just in our community but also outside to Fairway. But yes, the price tag is huge. I mean, it's more than $1 million. But like I said, I mean, half of that money will come from a different bucket, and with that, my personal feeling about this is that I would support this to move forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, I move to forward authorization to accept CEM Aquatics bids and authorize an additional $484,791.60 in ARPA funds, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract to complete the FWCC slide replacement project to the March 1, 2022 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Can you guys hear me now? Can I second it?
Yes.
Yes, welcome back.
I'm sorry. I'm not very good with technology and I was
That's
not
okay.
doing well. So I second the motion.
Great. Okay, I do see Deputy Mayor Honda hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you. So what is the total amount of ARPA money we're taking for this slide?
We've already authorized 500, so this would be an additional 484. That would be a total of 984.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other question, concern? Here none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Matter passed 3-0.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, I do want to apologize to Deputy Mayor Honda because earlier she asked to put one agenda item, which is the bonus incentive pay, to the committee for discussion, and I neglected to mention that. So my apology. Ryan, if we want to add another item on the agenda, how should we do this? Do we need a motion?
We've missed that opportunity, unfortunately. So I'm not sure if it was just to have a discussion. You guys can discuss it at the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
And I believe the intent was to bring this back to council. To bring that item back to council was my impression. Brian, are you here?
Yes, that was the, and we're prepared to do that at the next meeting.
Deputy Mayor Honda, would you be okay if we discuss this at the very last item?
Yeah, that would be fine. My purpose is that we're not on dais next Tuesday struggling to come up with a proposal, and we have something that is somewhat agreeable to most council members before next Tuesday. But thank you.
All right. I see committee members Norton with the hands up.
Yes,
Erica,
I have a question. So at the end of the meeting, we're going to discuss the ARPA proposals. Is that correct?
The bonus incentive pay.
The bonus incentive pay. Okay. And then, so at the end of the meeting, I can ask to discuss certain things. Is that correct? Like the ARPA proposal that was at the last at the last council meeting.
Ryan?
Within reason. So if it's something that's going to be in front of council anyway, I think this is an item that's already coming back to council. So
Okay.
no action can be taken that's not on the agenda. So it's never going to be anything that's you're going to vote on. But yes, that is what the other category was originally created for, was to talk about things that you want to talk about in the future, mostly is what it was for.
Okay. All right. So I'll wait until the end of the, thank you.
Great. Thank you for that guidance, Ryan. Okay, let's move on to item D, purchase of endpoint security software. Thomas?
Good evening, Chair Tran, committee, council members, deputy mayor, and council president. I have before you tonight a small presentation. Figured I just kind of overview a quick little thing here, what we're doing. And the purpose of the topic of today is purchase of endpoint security software. Endpoint security software is kind of a layer in which cybersecurity is maintained. This is an example that I was able to find. It's somewhat tries to relate exactly kind of what we have to do to try and defend our system. So it's not just one. There's no silver bullet that can just say, "Hey, you're secure. You can check that box." So it's made up of lots of different systems and softwares and all kinds of stuff. And at the end of the day, it comes down to it takes a lot of money. So what this particular solution that I'm proposing tonight is kind of in that orange section, which is endpoint security. So it's not our perimeter, it's not network, it's actually the endpoint. So by endpoint, I mean workstation, so computers, laptops, and also servers as well. And so think of it as they call it next gen antivirus and then some. It manages firewall and a couple other things as well, in addition to having insights on the actual host or device itself. So it kind of it's in a layered approach. Security is always a layer. Like I said, no silver bullet. So it's a mix of all kinds of different things. And you can see also down there policy management too. So it's not just software. It's actually a lot of processes and policy of what we do as well, which we're we're actually working on evolving that now. So another way to look at it, which this was presented last week by the Emergency Management Division of the state of Washington, and they call it the Swiss cheese model. And so you notice that endpoint detection is not on here. They were actually kind of looking at it a different way. But you can see the goal is to try and stop things, because not one thing is a solid piece of cheese. It always has holes in it. The goal is to just try and layer them in an approach that stops things from reaching your data. So this is just another way of looking at that. So I figured that would kind of help educate council a little bit on cybersecurity and kind of, again, it's not just one product. So it's a series of things. So when I'm coming before you, it's not just because I want to spend money. It's because unfortunately, a lot of the bad guys out there have nothing but time on their hands, and we have a lot to do on our side. So this is one of those, software proposals that is before you tonight. Is called the CIS Endpoint Security Services. It is a white labeled box or white boxed piece of software from CrowdStrike, which is a top tier security vendor. It's their Falcon product, but CIS rebrands it as their Endpoint Security Services, and they add value to it. And the value is that it's not just a piece of software. So if you follow this on the left side of your screen, the Endpoint Security Services detects and blocks malicious activity. Okay, cool. I can download Norton or McAfee or whatever, Avast, AVG, and put it on my computer, or use the built-in Windows Defender, and I can do that. But the value that's added is it's generated, so all of these endpoints will be monitored by a 24/7 by 365 Security Operations Center, or SOC, and the endpoints are configured to send certain pieces of data or events, things that are triggered by the software to this SOC for review, and they can announce there's a certain level of machine or AI based filtering that happens. And then once a particular event gets escalated to a point where it requires an actual human to look at it, they do that as well. And this is really the big piece here. There have been other products that I've looked at that provide similar next-gen antivirus, just as good. The problem with them is they don't have that monitoring component. They do, but we have to monitor it. So we have to take the time. We have to look at it. And this is not actually priced where it would be considerably more. It is a little bit more than comparable solutions, but again, it's that security piece. And so if a event happens on our network, on our servers or our endpoints that this software detects, they will actually reach out to us 24 hours a day and let us know we've got an issue and here's what they see and this is how we need to act. So kind of the pricing of how this solution works is it's $60 an endpoint per year. Endpoint could be, like I said, workstation, laptop, or desktop, laptop computer, as well as a server. Microsoft, Windows, Mac, Windows, Linux, Mac, all of them will work. So we've got about 600 endpoints, including the servers, and it's about 36.6. I've been trying to get this going since about November when they announced it. They did a pilot project with the elections infrastructure first to see how well it worked, and it was very successful last year. And so to get a lot of people on board as quickly as they could, because cybersecurity is top on a lot of people's lists and minds these days, they've allowed an intro pricing, which I've been able to secure even after the deadline, because I've been trying to get this for so long. So it's $51 for the first year, so it'd be about a little over $30,000. We have an annual $45,000 budget as part of the 2022 adopted. And we are eligible for this particular offering because we're a member of the MSISAC, or the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, via the CIS, or Centers for Internet Security. This is a sole source purchase due to the nature of the services component. It is unique. Yes, I can buy CrowdStrike elsewhere, but not with this particular security and not for this price. So I am seeking before you the approval of a not to exceed amount of $45,000. This will allow for future cost increases, so I don't have to keep coming back to council in future years. And also, if we need to add endpoints in the future, it will give me a budget, a ceiling of not to exceed. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And Thomas, if I could just piggyback on this, your proposal is within budget, so there isn't a single reason for finance to speak up, except for the fact that I also consider myself the defender of the bottom line for the city. And when we're talking cybersecurity, I get really nervous about even being very public when we budget or when we come for approvals. We don't want to telegraph our vulnerabilities. Phishing and ransomware are a serious thing. Cities are hit. And, working with city attorney, finance is everybody's partner here, and we want to protect the city and council members, you all have a perfect right to know, and we want to be transparent and accountable, but we want to be cautious too. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have committee members, Norton, and then council member Sefa Dawson. Go ahead.
You're muted, council member.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Fitchner, thank you for that presentation. So is this software, or is this a subscription, or that renews every year?
It is a subscription that renews every year, and it's both software and services. So there's a software component that's installed on the computer, and then the services is the monitoring component.
Is part of the subscription price if they want to, if they say, oh, because, this happens to me all the time. Well, that software is no longer valid. So you need to buy this new software because we're no longer servicing that. Is that something that's included in the subscription, the software component?
It's a good question though. So at this point, because it is a subscription, if they stopped offering, if for whatever reason they chose to go to a different vendor, so they are no longer partners with CrowdStrike. The beauty for us is that we haven't sunk a bunch of money into a one-time purchase. So we didn't spend $100,000 one time and then paying $30,000 a year to maintain it. So we just basically turn this off and we plug in a new solution. So it's frustrating for me personally, because it just, all these software companies are just about the annual MNO. They just want the subscription fee. They don't want to sell you software one time, because that's not where the money is. But in this case, it works out to our benefit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fitchner. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Or am I supposed to say Director Fitchner? Is that what I'm supposed to say?
Whatever works. I'm
Okay.
good. You can call me Thomas too. I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Assefa Dawson, go ahead.
We can't hear you too well. Still can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, we kind of hear you.
Did you try a little bit louder, maybe?
Still no?
A little bit.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up louder. I wanted to, my question is around training, staff training around security and how to use, all the phishing and everything. My organization doesn't, at least we train twice a year and get a certificate that we've been through it. So I don't know if staff does that. And if so, shouldn't council be a part of it, so we also do the right thing to make sure that our system is safe and secure and does not get impacted or get hacked? But to Director Groen's comment about the being vulnerable or showing what we have or what we don't have, actually that was part of a training that I heard last week, where you don't show your hands, but you could just have a general conversation around, our budget is safe or whatever. But I know in this climate we can't do that with because we are a public entity. But that was really something that stuck with me, because we are so open and we talk about all these things that are really public knowledge and everybody hears about it. So what is our safety measure, and is staff being trained on how to use the system securely and safely?
Good question, and that's something that we are also working on. So again, security's layered approach. So staff training is one of the bigger components to kind of safety. It's one of those that we send out emails every now and then to remind staff what they're doing. There have been some free from a security vendor consultant that some council, I believe you're still Councilmember Assefa Dawson, you were on council when they presented the findings of an audit that we had done about cybersecurity via an executive session. And so there's definitely room for any organization. I don't care if you're even Microsoft for that matter. There's always things that you can be doing better. And so we've identified a plan, and we're starting to move forward on that. User training and security awareness training is kind of how it's called, is one of those components. And so this, again, it goes back to that layered approach. We're also deploying multi-factor authentication, and so that way it's more annoying. Unfortunately, my tagline security is not convenient is ringing true, and even for us, I mean, more and more steps to prove you are who you are and you're supposed to be accessing that system. So that being said, it is coming. The plan for security awareness training for everybody, council as well as staff, because anybody who uses our system is ultimately what it comes down to.
Great. Thank you. One thing they also do at my work is every now and then you get these phishing emails where you click and you're supposed to, IT sees it and they know that you've done it correctly. So I think there's that quiz that reminding you. And so thank you very much.
So you've probably seen something that we have deployed, which is anytime there's an email that has a link embedded, it's actually masqueraded so that when you click on it, it redirects through Mimecast, our security system, and then sometimes it's random. I think it's like a 20% of the time when you click, it will ask you whether or not it's safe or not. And so if it is a not safe site and you click it and say yes, you think it's safe, then yes, we are made aware. So we are still using, leveraging the solutions that we do have and trying to kind of ramp them up. If we just go out of the gate, number one, we just don't have the manpower to just go out of the gate with all these solutions all at once. And also that's going to come to shock with everybody. So we're kind of ramping things up. And so that is the phishing emails is something we haven't actually done that yet, but that will be a part of the process as well.
Thank you.
Fine.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So Thomas, if I click that it's safe and it's not safe, because I get those quite often, and I open it, does it allow me to open it if it's not safe?
Yeah, if I remember correctly from the way it is set up, it will, but then we'll notify you, and then it will say, I'm trying to remember if how that process worked, where I have that configured at, but I think it will, even if you say there's like a way, like, no, trust me, I know this is good, but there's a layer in there that it's really getting you not to click it. But if there's, for whatever reason, you're like, no, this is coming from kingcounty.gov or something like that, I know it's legit, and you were expecting it, and for whatever reason the system flagged it because there are false positives, then there are those instances where that is necessary to go ahead and click through, but you're definitely going to be made aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sanford Dawson, I still see your hands up. Do you have another questions?
I'm so sorry. I will lower it.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you. Okay, if we don't have any other question, I would entertain a motion, please.
I move approval of the proposed purchase of Endpoint security software from the Center for Internet Security, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $45,000 annually.
Second.
I'm sorry. we need to make another motion.
Oh.
Councilmember.
Again?
Yeah, the top one is.
Oh,
okay,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I can do it.
I read the wrong one. Sorry.
It's okay.
I move to forward the proposed purchase of Endpoint security software to the March 1st, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
And I will second that.
Great. Is there any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are moving to item E, purchase of snow and ice equipment. DJ?
Good evening, Chair Tran, Council President, Deputy Mayor, members of Council. So I'm before you tonight to discuss the purchase of additional equipment related to snow and ice activities. So this year we had yet another heavy storm occur in the winter, which has been, we've now had this the last 4 years in a row. So we were asked, as Public Works, we were asked to research and report back on what will be required to increase our capacity to plow neighborhoods and what support that would take. At a core fundamental level, before we get to that, the plowing strategy that the city has adopted is built around the concept of do the greatest good. So it is start with the largest roads around hospitals, it is on the fire stations, but how do we get the most number of people, the highest used roads cleared first, and then work our way down the list, ultimately ending in the neighborhoods. And we know, as a city, that's how we manage to accomplish the most for the highest number of citizens. However, if you are the singular homeowner or apartment, that's not on the main drag, we certainly understand and we hear the feedback that's great that Pack Highway is plowed or 320th is plowed, but I live 4 miles from there. So how do I get from my apartment to 320th? So fundamentally, there's always going to be that little bit of a pull between serving the greatest number of people and a singular house or a singular apartment. So what we were asked to do is not change that, but to look at what would it take to have dedicated trucks serving the neighborhood collectors and trying to cut that delta between the two conversations down to a more manageable level. So we looked at that. We looked at the plows we used. We looked at the number of lane miles we're able to do during a normal event. This year, the week-long event we had this year was a little bit on the more extreme than we typically see, but frankly, it has been what we've averaged for the last 4 years. So it became very quick to surface that the main hurdle we had was storage of salt. So we don't have room in the current maintenance yard to build another bay. Our bays are as stacked as high as we can go during the summer with the equipment we currently have. So we looked at a couple different options. We did look at storing off-site and what other locations that the city already owned property that we could use. Granted, that introduces a whole nother layer of complication of trying to load trucks in the middle of an event. But even before we got to that point, that concept kind of got disqualified. We also looked at what we could do to figure out a way to do something to build another facility inside the current yard. And then the third option we looked at was the purchase of equipment. So it's called a material stacker that would allow us to go higher in the current configuration that we have. It became apparent that it is substantially cheaper to stay within the current footprint and use a material stacker to stack the salt higher in the bins we already have than it is to build something new. So that's the recommendation. On the truck side, what we did is we looked at the number of lane miles and hours that we're plowing currently, and we looked at the number of collectors in the neighborhoods, and we basically sat down and did some math to figure out how many trucks and what sizes we would need to be able to get basically all of the neighborhood collectors done with dedicated trucks and not take away from conversation one. The answer to that was 2 of the 5-yard trucks, which is the smallest full-size plow that we use. And then, those trucks would not sit idle the rest of the summer. These trucks are used by parks and public works on a daily basis. The 5-yard trucks are the ones we use the most because they are the most flexible. So as an aside, this would help both departments year round. These trucks will be used daily in the summer as well. And then the final component, which we will talk about, as part of the budget process, is staffing in itself. I did put it in the memo that's in the FedRec packet, just in full transparency. Looking at the staffing levels that we have now, looking at the resources it takes to put one of our trucks on the road on a 24-hour basis, we know it takes 2.3 FTEs to run 24-hour operations. All of our CDL drivers are currently assigned to the current trucks, so we don't have additional staff to drive these trucks. So that's in there, just that as a kind of a caveat that it'll need to be addressed during the budget process, and they can be spread over some of the restricted funds as well. All of this equipment is proposed to be purchased through a assortment of the procurement contracts that we use. So a combination of the Sourcewell federal contract, the state contracting, and then NJPA, which is another federal contract. So all of these are through those sources. This is proposed to be purchased out of ARPA funding, and it is a defined approved use for city infrastructure. So that was the findings after discussing it with the mayor, and then this came up at the council meeting immediately after the snow and ice event of how do we serve more neighborhoods. We were asked to move forward with bringing this to council, so that is what we're here to do tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, EJ. Is there any question for EJ? Committee member Dovey, go ahead, please.
Yeah. The one question I have, EJ, if we weren't using ARPA funds, would we still be getting the recommendation to buy these trucks?
So, I mean, ultimately, this conversation comes down to what's the desired level of service. If the desired level of service is what was expressed at the council meeting, this is the equipment we need to be able to meet that. So if that's the level of service we want, yes, this is the equipment we need to do it, no less, no more. If the desired level of service is to maintain what we're doing today and not go into the neighborhoods, then we don't need these trucks.
Okay. Chair, I'd like to make a comment. We went through this same process many years ago when I was previously on the council, and the decision was made at that time to buy trucks because we didn't have much snow and removal back in, I don't know, 13 years ago or whatever it was. And so this is the type of thing that even if we didn't use ARPA funds, I would support, because it goes right to the heart of what we're supposed to do is fill potholes and put up stop signs and make it so our citizens can travel. And we've, ever since we did it the very first time as a council, we were able to have some of the best roads in the region that were always clear. And back in the day when Mayor Nichols of Seattle lost his job, we had the best roads around. So again, I support this 100%, regardless if we use ARPA or not, because I think it's a type of public service that we have to provide our citizens.
Thank you for your comment. Committee members, Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm in full support, Director Walsh. But I just had a question, which, being in construction, I hate safety people. I'm just going to say that, but I'm going to ask, how high are you stacking the containers? And have you considered like what would happen if one of them fell over? Are they in a place, or are they the kind of thing that just stacks well? I mean, what's the highest that those are going to be stacked?
So the salt itself is ground stacked. It's stacked in a pile. We dump it with a dump truck, and then it's stacked with a front end loader. It's not in containers. Okay. It's in silo bays that are made out of concrete blocks. Oh. Right now, and so then you stack a pile almost like you would stack dirt or beauty bark or anything like that. It's the same type of system, only it's covered so the salt doesn't disappear when it rains. Right. But right now we stack in one of the bays is substantially wider, so we can kind of almost cut a ramp into it, and that one we can stack to about 16 feet right now. All the others are 12. This would allow us to actually go to 40. And wow. all of our bays are designed. The one is designed to go to 48. The other three are designed to go to 36. So obviously we would have to stop at 36 in those three. But this would actually allow us to use the full capacity of the bays.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So EJ, I just want to make sure that today we only talking about the equipment. Some point in the future, we would have to get together and talk about the FTE to run these trucks, correct?
Correct. And the reason, I guess, just to be clear, and we discussed this at the council meeting, it's the lead time associated with this stuff. So the stacker, the lead time is fairly short in today's market. It's only about 12 weeks because there's one already built in Oregon. But the caveat is we can only get salt in the summer. So we have to have the stacker to be able to get the salt, or else we're back to the conversation of where do we put all this salt. Skipping the conversation about moving it multiple times. The trucks are about a year out. So Kenworth does have a couple bodies that are partially built that have not been acquired yet. So we are doing our best, assuming council advances this, to try and secure those, not start from scratch. But even with that, with the upfitting, we're not going to see these trucks till the end of the year, which will allow us to your point, Chair Tran, to have the staffing conversation as just as part of the budget.
Right. Thank you. Is there any more question for EJ before we make a motion? Here are none.
I move to approve the, am I on the right? Okay, I move to forward option 1 to the March 1 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Great. Is there any question or discussion? Here are none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you, EJ.
Council.
Okay, we are moving on to. This item should be item F because we have 2 E's on the agenda. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this to item F. AP voucher, January 16, 2022 to February 15, 2022, and payroll voucher on the 1st of January 2022 until the January 31st of 2022.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Chase Donnelly was kind enough to cover for me last month when I was out of town, so I'm gonna fill in for him, and I'll develop some appreciation for an item that he has to present every month. The vouchers for the month of January are in your packet, and as always, we provide a complete detail list for transparency. And this month's disbursements, they're in the normal range. The total disbursements for accounts payable were 2.8 million, and payroll was about 3.8. Payroll is almost the same every month with a little bit of fluctuation, and accounts payable does depend on the timing that invoices are received, but it's in the normal range as you'd expect. Deputy Mayor Honda provided questions for staff to explain a few of the items, and staff provided some further details. That was pretty late this afternoon. I don't know if you all got that, but the response that we sent did go out to the full council and mayor and city administrator. So having provided that transparency and accountability, staff recommends approval unless there are any further questions you'd like us to pursue.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Mad at me. I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. What is item line 280252 dated January 31st? Key Bank. What is an FI bank fee analysis?
I hesitate to reply to that one on the fly. I think it's just a bank fee for what Key Bank charges at our monthly bank analysis is how they look at our account. They look at the average balances that we keep and the volumes of things. I would be happy to get you an accurate answer and email that separately.
Okay. I just wondered what it was. And
sure,
then
that's the bank that we use.
Okay. And then my other question is so there was a cost of $491,300.39 for transportation equipment. What is that? Just something I need to email you about?
Yes, we're happy to answer that. We're happy to provide that.
Okay.
Yeah, we put everything publicly to make it transparent, and but you can see with the length of the list, you can try to stump the finance director and you'll do it. I guarantee it.
Well, no, I was going to say, don't you have this memorized?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get you an answer.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any other question for Director Groom? If not, may I have a motion, please?
I move adoption.
I'll second that. Any other questions, discussion?
I'm sorry, Chair. We're moving to forward the item.
Do you want me to say it?
You can say it.
Okay. I move to forward the vouchers to the March 1st, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you. And now we are moving to item G, monthly financial report, December of 2021.
Thank you. And I need to treat Chase Donnelly with more respect because that last agenda item was hard to make interesting. This one I can make interesting for you. This is our monthly financial report, and I do try to make it interesting for you every month. As you probably know, the December results. This is going to be our December 21 unaudited results, and we're also going to give you some January revenue and investments. I'll draw from what's in your packet, from which you already have. As you probably know, the December results also depend on a lot of audit preparation. So there are some accruals and some reconciliations that occur only at year end. When we look at December financial results, this is kind of preliminary to the audited financials that you'll be getting when the auditors are done. And part of that is because expenses have a 60-day window where we have to pay invoices and accrue some revenues because some of them come in to us normally on a 2-month lag, such as sales tax. So what that means is that January and February activity can still impact December, but we want to give you what we know, report everything that we do know about. So I can give you some updates. We will, as always, give you the cash and the investments, and we'll show you some key revenues. And part of this, this is the year end. This does two things for us. This lets us see a full year of activity on the year that we just finished, and it also lets us start to look at the following year as we start thinking about next year's budget. So as always, for folks that read nothing else in the monthly report, the very first cover page tells you right up front how the city's general fund is doing. This month, there's no other way to say it. Our audit year-end process is kind of starting to kind of goof up our normal flow. Revenues this month look unfavorable. But our actual revenues are essentially on budget, and the total is unfavorable because when we got to year end, because some of our revenues came in favorably, we did a less than budgeted transfer into the general fund of about 1.1 million, and that's actually good news. We didn't have to give the general fund as much. Year end is when we start doing accounting hoops. That kind of blurs the picture. I'm sorry, auditors are coming. They'll double check us, but this is actually just fine. Expenses are favorable by 11.9 million, and you say, what in the world? Where did that huge number come from? And that is because $9 million of ARPA is essentially unspent, so we're going to be carrying that forward as a favorable into the following year, and I think you're all very aware of that. So I want to kind of try to keep the accounting technicalities from blurring how we report to you how the city is doing, because the city is doing very, very well. And I'll go into some more detail here. This shows you on the top graph the revenue and the expenses in dollars. Actual revenues in green, and then budget is in gray. And then the expenses are in red and the budget is in gray. And then you can see the percents down below. And that just shows the same thing that we just showed you a moment ago. Having shown you that, there is a page, and it's in your packet every month. And some of you, when I met with you one-on-one as part of my orientation, I said, this is my favorite page in the financial report. It's at the back. It's about page 15. But this month, it's particularly important because this is our preliminary pre-audit year-end balance. This page tells you the whole entire city on one page. And I know it's a lot of little numbers, but if you look at the top, you can see that for every fund of the city, we start with a column that gives us our beginning balances, and then we have each fund's revenues, and then we have each fund's expenditures, and then revenues minus expenditures. The net would be the difference right there, and you add that to the beginning balance, and there's our ending balance. And oh, by the way, the very final column is kind of a memo column, if you will. This is the required fund balance. Required by who? It's required by you, the city council, by policy. The city has a fund balance policy. So this is the target that we as a city have set for each of the funds as our targeted fund balance that we want to maintain for the city's financial health. So if you look at the very bottom, you can see that the whole entire city started the year with a beginning fund balance of 72.2 million, and we ended with 93. So that sounds pretty good. We added 21 million, And up here at the top, the general fund. The general fund is really the single most important, most manageable. It's the one that gets the most focus in the budget, certainly. We have an ending balance of about 21 million against a target of 9.5, and that again sounds pretty healthy until I remind you that, well, 9 million of that is probably the ARPA that we didn't spend, and it probably will get spent. But it's still, if you take that away, we're above our required fund balance, so that's a positive. If I just pick and choose a couple to point out, this number right here is our real estate excise tax fund. I report revenue every month because that's one of the economic indicators. Shows you how the real estate market is doing, both in terms of volume of transactions and the valuation of the properties. And you can see that this fund is about double what the target is. So that gives us some flexibility when we start getting into budgeting our next budget, why that'll be available. And then we have a strategic reserve fund, and it's right on the target that we have set for it coming out of COVID. That's also good news. If we get in front of rating agencies, all of these are going to be good indicators. And the last one I will just point out as a little seed that I'd like to plant, and this is our fleet and equipment replacement fund. When I come to a city, I'm always glad to see that we have an equipment replacement fund. I'm glad to see that we're funding it. And this is actually right about where it should be until we go and we add 28 new police vehicles. So we're going to want to look at this one as part of our long-term planning when we get into budgeting. But again, as I said, the whole entire city, you can see that we've increased our fund balance by 21 million. So overall, you can expect that when our audit gets done in several months, we will look great. I have a couple of familiar slides. We bring you this graph every month, and this shows 3.5 years of cash balance history. The last 4 months have hovered around $95 million. Cash and investing, I hope it becomes routine in future months, but during this kind of season, we have been making a material shift in our cash management. I've been bringing you our investment activity. I want to be very transparent and very public about how we go about it. Just to orient folks, if anybody's watching that's new to the graph, that little yellow bars, that's how much we have in the checking account. Green is what we have for liquidity in our state government pool, which every city in Washington typically puts quite a bit of their cash in. And the blue bars down at the bottom, that is our investment activity that we have been doing. You can see we have been investing $4 million every month, and we're up to $16 million, and that surpasses what we had 3.5 years ago. And you know, after Thomas presented on cybersecurity, I thought, what am I doing advertising to the world that the city has $100 million in the bank every month? But nevertheless, we're public, and we exercise good stewardship, and we also want to be careful. So this graph shows our investments diversified by issuer. We bought 4 more this last month. The big green slice is our balance in the state investment pool, and the other $16 million is what we've invested in everything else. We're investing in treasuries and 3 issuers: Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal Farm Credit, and Fannie Mae. All of those are extremely safe, AAA quality. We're up, some of those, Federal Home Loan Bank, that's up to 3.4% of the portfolio. Our current investment policy has a per issuer limit of 5%, and I really wanted to get our investment policy to you so that we can get that raised, and I will, I'm hoping for next month. But this is what we're talking about. Our goal has been to invest about $36 million, which would be about half the pie. So we're about, a little over a third of the way there. We have about 20% invested. My original goal was to get us to about 50%, and I think we've been seeing interest rates raising. So in a few slides, I'm going to start talking about revising our strategy now that we have a little bit of more experience and we're being aware of what's going on in the economy. This is the slide that just shows that every month we buy one more 3-year maturity, and then we go back and fill in 3 more slots. What that means is that in the future, we will have $1 million maturing to be reinvested at whatever the then prevailing rates are. And this is just us being very disciplined, methodical. This table lists 36 maturity dates, and I think as we start to see interest rates rising, it's going to make sense. Yeah, when we get to June, we will have completed all of this investment, and then we can reevaluate and start looking at whether we want to go out 4 and up to 5-year maturities. This is the table that gives us as the cities, it gives you all something to brag about. Here's the $73 million that we have in the state pool, the $16 million that we have in our portfolio that we've been investing, and so the total here shows a total of $89 million. The yield in the state pool is still earning 0.08%, 8 basis point. Everything that we have invested, on average, is earning 10 times that amount. So what we've done is we've still kept our funds safe. We've kept them liquid. We've improved our yield. Our average yield, even including what's in the state pool, is up to 0.2%, and we're improving it every month. And this is the amount that we now have that will be budgetable, spendable. And one thing I want to point out is, why in the world has the state pool yield not increased? We've been, every month when we do our investing, we have been getting slightly better and better and better. I mean, we're up to almost 2%, which is not a historical high by any means. But the reason that the state pool's yield hasn't budged, here's a basic 101 investment slide. If you've ever walked into a bank, you know this. Buying a 5-year CD pays a higher rate than a 1-year CD. And that's just because 5 years out is more risk. The farther out you commit your money, the higher the yield. So this graph shows that across the bottom, this is the yield. Now this is dated today. I went and looked at the U.S. Treasury website. This is if we went and bought $1 million investment this morning, this is the yields we could have expected to get if we had purchased a 1-month or a 3-month or a 3-year. Those are the rates, and then here's the yield going up there. So we have been building a 3-year investment portfolio so that in the future rates any month we'll just reinvest $1 million at the then prevailing rates. Our average maturity then is about a year and a half. The state pool, however, only purchases investments in this range, in the 1-month to 3-month. They have an average maturity of 50 days. They have a policy limit of 60 days. And recently they have actually reduced it. They have gone shorter and shorter and shorter. So they're purposely limiting their yield. And that's the yield that we get on our 73 million. They've been reducing it because they're betting. They know that, and the Federal Reserve, they've been telegraphing that in March we're anticipating a 1/4 point increase. So they're betting that the interest that is foregone by buying shorter things, they'll more than make up when rates rise. But again, the range that we have been buying in is far, far, far greater. And as this whole yield curve raises, that's why our city is getting more revenue. But I also wanted to explain, our rates are going up, and the state treasurer's isn't. Is that a yellow flag? Is our finance director doing something that we should be concerned about? I thought that should be explained. So why is this important to you? City money, we know that this is not our own money, so we need to be accountable. And then I do want to start talking about a strategy shift in the near future, so I want to be transparent about that. But you as a governing body, you have policy level stewardship, your governance, and when I get our proposed revised investment policy through legal and other reviews, I want to bring it to this council, and so I hope that these reports that I've been bringing to you monthly makes that territory much more familiar. The policy hasn't been updated since 2013. So a summary on the investments: we're doing $4 million each month. 5 more months, we'll get at our full $36 million. The average yield that we've been getting is much, much better than what the state pool is doing, and now we're at 19. We're almost to the 80-20 rule. 19% of our portfolio is now earning 70% of the yield. Here's a new slide for you, the economic outlook. I know that you all read the paper, and you know that you've probably been hearing about inflation. 7.5% is in the news at the moment. Is it going to go up? Is it going to come back down? The Federal Reserve is working on reducing or unwinding their quantitative easing. What that all that means is that the Fed bought a huge amount of Treasury debt, $4 trillion. We buy Treasuries and we own $10 million of their debt. The Fed just bought up a huge amount. Well, if they stop buying that and just let them mature, that's going to change the money supply. They're going to, and so what they're doing is they're working to normalize interest rates to curb inflation. Well, that's good. That's good news for us on the investment side, but it's not good news on every other part of our expense. So I'm keeping an eye on the economic environment as we get close to doing budgeting. But what it means for us for investing is we do have, I think we can all see that we do have more liquidity than we could possibly need for the foreseeable future. So we have kept plenty of wiggle room for us to lock in higher rates. When we finish our 36 million, I'll be coming back and we'll see where rates at. And I think it really will be in the city's interest to lock in some higher rates for a little bit longer. I just want to be a little bit more thorough in my monthly report. I sent out a memo to all of you recently, and these graphs are straight out of that. I want to, again, as we start we're going to be having budget discussions later in the year. So I like to make this all familiar territory. Generally, government uses debt to smooth out paying for infrastructure over the length of the service of that asset. That means that the users of anything that we are issuing debt for, the debt service, that's the way that we have our ratepayers pay their fair share each year in our budget. Now, if we buy things like police cars every year, well, we can buy a fraction of them every single year and avoid some debt interest without doing debt. But for the really big things like a community center or a performing arts center, it's pretty common to use debt to spread the cost. So the multicolored graph is the one that shows the whole entire city's debt balance at the end of 2020, and you can see it being amortized out into the future. And then each of those color-coded pieces of the bar I have separated so that you can see the debt on our community center. The green one is one piece of debt on the Performing Arts Center. The blue graph is also a piece of debt that pertains to the Performing Arts Center. I wasn't here when we did that transaction. I know that we did use a special debt instrument that was a HUD loan that I think it originally contemplated using CDBG funding, and I think that's since stopped, but that's still an obligation of the city. Two other pieces. The yellow graph at the bottom, that is the debt pertaining to our score. I don't have that memorized. That's our jail contract. That was many, many years ago, so that's still an obligation that will be paid off in future years. The little red graph at the bottom shows 20 and 21, and then it goes away. That's because there's a $5 million balloon payment that was contemplated back when the debt was issued in 2017. I wasn't here, but I imagine that we probably projected that there would be a transaction, there would be some development, it would take this off our books. That hasn't happened, so we'll just need to refinance that debt later this year. So we'll be coming to you on agenda. I think the debt service is about $400,000, so we'll need to make sure that's in our budget as well. So the purpose of this is to keep you informed. Every month I want to try to do a good job of being transparent. And shifting over to sales tax revenue, here is the complete revenue. 2 months ago was December. The sales transactions happened. They remitted to the state, and now we've got it remitted to us. So I can show you that the budget was $16 million. The actual came in at 17.5, so the difference was 1.5 million. I think this shows that we were cautious and conservative when we did our budgeting, which was wise during COVID, during that period of uncertainty. So this will offset some revenues that may not have fared so well. It's also an indicator of local economy, which is why you as a council probably want to keep your thumb on the pulse of what's happening with sales tax in the city of Federal Way. In addition to this graph, though, this year I have a graph that shows a multiple year trend. This shows 2021, the year just finished, and the 5 previous years. As we start getting into thinking about a budget process, why it makes sense for us to look at the history. Not only that, when we get into budgeting, why we can start doing things like this. Now, this is just placeholder numbers, but using these figures, you can see that we can continue to estimate and escalate into the future, and we have to anticipate what's happening in the economy, and we have to pay attention to what's happening with our own economic development, things like that. Just to give you some context, if an 8% increase in sales tax would add $542,000, and then we could be increasingly cautious as we go out. And this is how we get into why we budget, where the money that funds a very large part of our general fund. I just want you to see the thinking that we in finance have. Here's our utility tax revenue. Again, this is on a scale of $20 million. The budget was 15.7, and the actual came in at 17 million. So the positive variance was 1.3, and that's a healthy 8% positive variance. So good for us on how we budgeted. I wasn't here. I can't take the credit. Give that to Ade and the rest of the team. Real estate excise tax. I always show this to you because this is also an economic indicator. This has to do with how the real estate valuations and transactions are. This graph does not have a $20 million scale. It's a $5 million scale. But the actual came in at 5.2 million, which exceeds budget just barely by 135,000. I think the timing of REIT has been a bit of a roller coaster. And you can see, looking at that red line in the current year, there is something going on. There was a big August, and then the previous year, there was a big December. You can see this is not a smooth graph. So I'd like to use REIT as an example, and let me give you a peek behind the curtain of budgeting. This is the kind of thing that drives us crazy in budgeting. This is a monthly graph. The brightest color, the brightest green is 2021. It's the year just ended. And so you can see January through December of 2021. And then the darker green, and then the black, and then fade to gray and fade to white. Those are all the previous years. I'm trying to make a very busy graph easy to read understanding. So if we go to start budgeting REIT for the following couple of years, we want to look at monthly. Which months are the ones that are seasonal? In fact, is it even seasonal? In 2017, March was a big month. August was a big month in 2019 and 2021. September and October were both big in 2016. There is no pattern here. December was big in 2018 and 2019 and 2020, and each of those could very easily have bled into January, which would have been the following year if an escrow didn't close or something. So I just want to point out that we can't just take a total year over year and apply a CPI escalator percent or something. We want to have some level of sophistication. We really want to pay attention and know what's going on with our city. I'm new to federal way. I'm not new to budgeting, so I'm going to depend on having friends and partners. REIT in this case is a restricted revenue. It's restricted for debt, for some of our debt payments, and it's also capital projects that E.J. Walsh and John Hutton care about. So if the revenue doesn't come in, we can kind of manage our budget by just deferring some projects. They won't be happy about it, but we have some degree of manageability. And when it comes in more, whether that adds to the fund balance for REIT in the following year, we can catch up and add some things that are on the waiting list. So this is me trying to make my monthly report interesting. Thank you very much for listening. To conclude, at the preliminary year end, revenues came in essentially on budget. I did explain that variance that had to do with an interfund transfer. Expenses were quite favorable, and we're carrying some ARPA over to the following year. We're growing investment revenue. We're looking at the economic outlook with an eye towards the future, and we're being very mindful of the 2023-24 budget process, which we will talk about more on Saturday. If I have exhausted your patience, I apologize, but thank you. I'm here for questions. I want you to all feel briefed and feel like you know what's going on financially with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Groom. Let's see.
Way too much talking on my part.
No, you're fine. Committee members Norton and then Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you, Director Groom. That was great. I really appreciated it because I'm new and I'm learning about the city structure, the financial structure. So I had a question about, you mentioned a strategy shift. So I was referring to the graph where we have most of the investments are in the state of Washington fund. the state pools. Is that because of the low risk that we have so much in there, or what's the reason for that? Is that a requirement?
It's not. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
No, I'm sorry. I thought I might have been muted. It's very common. Every city in Washington does put their liquidity in that fund. A lot of cities don't do investing, and that might be because they don't have the staff or the time, or they might not have a lot to invest, or other reasons. I hesitate to speak for my predecessors. It just happens to be something that I came with that I'm very familiar with. One reason that we have kept a lot in the state pool would be that rates have been historically low. I mean, since 2008, when we had the Great Recession, when Lehman Brothers defaulted, rates have just been really, really low. So you wouldn't want to lock in low rates. But now that we see rates starting to rise, I have been buying investments that only have a maturity date going forward 3 years. So we're locking in. We're absolutely going to get our $1 million back in 3 years, and we get fixed certain interest that we can budget for 3 years. As rates begin to rise, it will make sense to start buying 4-year and 5-year. And so instead of putting 36 million into a laddered portfolio, it would make sense to do 48 or 60. As long as we know that we have got our safety and our liquidity covered, we don't want to lock, for example, ARPA money. We know we're going to spend that in the next couple of years. So thank you very much.
So
Great question.
Is that so? Are you looking at certain percentages and the higher risk? Because when I see that something's getting a lower percentage, I think, well, then that's probably a lower risk investment. So are you looking at moving a certain percentage? Like, do you have a number in mind of, this certain risk, a medium risk, and then a certain percentage into a higher risk? And then that's something we're going to talk about on Saturday anyway, right?
Actually, everything that we're investing in is perfectly safe. It's all AAA rated. We're buying U.S. Treasuries, which is a debt issue of the federal government, and we're also buying the government-sponsored agencies like Fannie and Freddie. So the only risk that I am managing is the maturity risk, the reinvestment risk. If I buy something for 3 years or 5 years, we risk not having the cash to be able to invest it.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for letting me explain myself.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. The interfund transfer that you talked about a couple times here tonight, what was that for? Where did that go?
When we create the budget, there are interfund. I think that one would have been from utility tax to general fund, and the utility tax came in higher, and so we didn't need to give as much to the general fund. So the general fund looks like it has less revenue than it was budgeted.
Okay. And would it be better to pay off our debt than it is to make the investments that you're making?
I'm not sure, and I'm being honest. We have to look to see if
everybody was frozen for a second.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. Honestly, that's something we can have a discussion. I think that would be a really smart discussion to have in the budget. If it makes sense for the city, some of the debt is depending on future REIT to come in, so we would be spending REIT in advance. So we want to look to see if that makes sense. So I will say maybe, and we will get our pencils out and we'll come and give you a good rationale when we do the budget and choices, right? Also,
okay.
the debt was probably very low interest, so it may be a good thing to just leave it in debt. I'm not sure. Good money management. Thank you.
Councilmember Asifa Dawson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. On one of the slides you had where it was green, blue, and yellow, where the yellow was cash on hand, and there were months that it was not there. Does that really mean, am I misunderstanding it? Because this is not in my world, but did that really mean we did not have cash on hand, or what does that mean?
I always grab the very first of the month, and payroll comes in about the first of the month, and sometimes sales tax comes in the first of the month. So I think there were some months on that graph where the sales tax hadn't come in or the payroll might have been paid. Um, so instead of being in the checking account, it was in the state pool. But in total, I think we were fine.
Okay. So it doesn't mean anything bad then.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Committee member Jack Dovey, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I'd like to ask is follow up on Deputy Mayor Honda's question. When we look at the bonds that we have or the debt that we have, and we're trying to go out 3 years on this investment pool of $1 million or $4 million, with the number per quarter, wouldn't we be getting a higher interest rate if we had a debt of $4 million and pay it off instead of, because we're paying more than 1% or 2% on some of those debts, I'm assuming, if they're callable?
Yes, and one of them is callable this year in December, only one of them. So we will look at that because our choices when we go to refinance the debt on the Target building, we have a choice of calling the SCORE jail contract debt. No, I'm sorry, it's a community center debt. So September, October, we'll come bring you the rationale.
But on the Target building, we're paying interest right now. And if we decided to pay that $5 million off or that number, isn't that a better return on our money than putting $1 million into less than 1% or 1.5%?
It could be if we're paying more on debt than we're earning. Yeah.
And that would that be part of the strategy you'd be thinking about instead of putting $1 million aside into treasuries, just reduce our debt so we're paying ourselves instead of paying somebody else?
You're talking common sense. I don't know if we do that here.
Well, hopefully we do. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I do see committee member Norton have another questions.
Okay, it's me again. I've been very concerned about the Target building, and like Council Member Dovey mentioned, it would be, as someone who's managed debt for the last 15, 16 years, it is less expensive to pay off debts that have higher interest than to have investments that aren't. How do we get that into a discussion where we can actually make some kind of headway on it? How do we do that? Do we put it as an agenda item? I'm just asking you, Director Crum.
Yeah, City Administrator Davis has already got that rolling with some discussion on that. As far as the finances go, I think originally the debt was contemplating that we only had to do a bridge loan until we had a transaction that would take it off of our books. So it is part of a much larger discussion outside of just whether we carry debt or not. Also, when if we were to pay down debt, we're using taxpayer money, and anytime that we use taxpayer money in the current year, we have to make sure that we're not penalizing our current taxpayers by not delivering services. It's like
all the money is taxpayer money, though. We don't. All the money that we have is taxpayer money, I thought. So
that's correct.
Confused.
That's correct. Imagine if you saved up for many years to buy a house or buy a car, you would scrimp and save in order to get that to pay cash. Well, that means you would be depriving yourself. In our case, we would be depriving taxpayers of services like police or street repair, something like that. So one of the reasons that we used it is for generational equity. We want to make sure that the payments that everybody's paying matches the services that they're getting. So sometimes we don't want to save, we want to spread the cost of, and that's typical for large pieces of infrastructure like a community center or a performing arts center. I'm absolutely open to doing the analysis, to doing the cost and benefit, to make sure that we're being good stewards and doing, like Councilmember Dovey suggested, common sense
Okay.
management. Yeah,
Thank you.
certainly.
I see the hand of Councilmember Sefa Dawson. You have another question, Lydia? No?
I keep forgetting to lower it. Sorry. Thanks for checking though. You never know.
Sure. Okay, now I move into committee members. Dovey, go ahead.
I just have one follow-up question to Councilmember Norton's. The money that is like on target, that particular money, when we talk about refinancing and when we have the multiple, 50 million or whatever the number is now in the state fund, if we were to use that type of money to pay down that kind of debt, that's not really impacting our operations in any way, because that's rainy day fund or emergency fund. It's not operating money, correct?
Well, if you go back to that page that where I showed all of the different funds, $3 million is in our rainy day fund, 21 million is in our general fund. Some of the money is restricted, like 7.5 million is restricted for fleet. So all of that money that's in the state pool belongs to one fund or another here at the city. I don't mean to count. I know this is government. I'm going to make it as complicated as possible.
Okay. Okay. So what you're saying is, if there was 7 million in the equipment replacement fund, there's not really 7 million in our bank. The 7 million is in the state fund that's getting less than 0.03%.
That's right. So the best I can do is to put it to work a little bit better. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Excellent. The last agenda item, you all have made this fun. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Groom, I do have 2 questions.
I'm not off the hook yet.
No, not yet, not yet. So, would it be possible for you to do an analysis based on what Councilmember Dovey suggested? Use the money that, instead of going to the investment pool, use that money to pay down our debt and make the comparison so that council can, have that information.
I'd be happy to. And what you all are seeing is I've been here 6 months, and so I'm increasingly getting my arms around more and more. And so being able to come up with those debt graphs, I'm making progress on it myself. So I'm sharing with you what I learn as I go. I'll be happy to.
Right. Thank you. The other question I want to ask is regarding the inflation. So currently, the inflation is around 7.5%. I know that as an individual, that's going to impact us more than anything, because we are losing the purchase power of the dollar. Now, in terms of revenue for the city, do you foresee how is that going to impact our ability to generate revenue? Is that going to be positive or negative? Or?
Can I make this as complicated as possible? Sales tax revenue, as prices as prices increase in the stores and wherever the taxable items, our sales tax would increase. Our purchasing that we pay for things that we buy, that'll be a negative. That'll make things more expensive, and that could have some impact on some of our labor costs. I don't know. It's a lot of things, and we will try to build those escalators into our budget.
Okay, I just thought that I'd just throw it out there.
Right, but we have to be sophisticated. We have a large budget. We can't be just blindly using broad brush percents. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for trying. Committee member Norn, go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Director Groom, I was planning on asking you about that on Saturday. So, is that something that we will be discussing on Saturday, or is there a possibility that we can talk about the state of the economy and how that's going to affect our city? It's a huge concern for me, for my business, and for my household. And so I've been making very serious plans, like when President Biden dumped all that money into the system, I went, oh my God. And I went out and bought like $500 worth of laundry detergent. And it's doubled in price since I bought and my husband said, you're crazy. Well, it's doubled in price since I bought all of that laundry detergent in the beginning of 2021. and I'm seeing, you know, gas is up 40% and that kind of stuff. Is that something that we can discuss Saturday, or is that something that I should wait to discuss at a different time? It's just a question.
Certainly, absolutely. I think that's great. This agenda item is primarily to bring you the historical results, and we use that. Everything that I've been showing you that we know that to be true about the economy and how the city has been doing. That will certainly inform us as we do our budget. I'm planning on Saturday to bring an overview of how the city budget process works, what our calendar is, what our timeline is, what we know about our revenue, and where we're looking for your involvement with you as a city council. And this is a dialogue. We absolutely would love to have that discussion. So Saturday, let's do that.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your patience with me. Thank you.
It's a two-way street. Thank you for listening to everything I'm throwing at you.
Great discussion. Thank you, everybody. Now we need a motion to move this on.
On mute. Okay, options. Committee I move to forward the December 2021 monthly financial report to the March 1, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other questions? I see Council President.
No, later.
No?
Later.
Oh, later.
No, after this. Mm-hmm.
All right. If there's no question, we're ready to vote. If you agree, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. That concludes our regular business, and now we are moving on.
Chair Tran,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
You now have to go back to actually, I don't think you actually made the motion and actually finished accepting the minutes, because Jack Dovey, you were trying to wait for Jack. So you do have to do that one. And then the other motions that he wasn't there for, you can just say he wasn't available. Or you can ask him how he would vote, one of the two.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder.
At this point, his vote was not dispositive on anything. So if something had failed, we would have gone back to it. But we had a quorum and a vote, so we're done.
Okay.
Thanks.
But I don't think we actually voted on the minute. So, yeah.
Okay. So the two item A and B will have 2-0 votes.
Right.
For the record. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we are ready for item H, bonus incentive pay. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So I sent all of you the emails the questions that I had asked staff, and there were 2 different emails included. I hope you've had a chance to read those, but I would like to suggest for the incentive bonus that we offer the same amount of money to all staff and not base it on 2.5% of their pay, because that really gives an unbalanced amount for different staff members. And in my opinion, I think it would just be better if we had a set amount, excuse me, that each staff member would get. And so according to those emails, the lowest bonus per year would have been just over $1,000, and the highest would have been just under $5,000. So I would like to suggest that we either give every employee $2,500 a year or $3,000 per year, and then make it retroactive to those employees who start after January 1st, 2022, so that they can be included in this also. I had heard from the chief that some of his employees would like to have more of a bonus than officers who have just started. And if we wanted to address that, I was thinking that any employee that we've had for over 5 years could perhaps get an additional $500. just an idea. I just don't want us to go to council next week and not have discussed this. I don't think a discussion, I think it would be better to come with some ideas ahead of time instead of throwing ideas out at that point. So just an idea. I'd like to see where everyone's at on this.
Okay, thank you. So for the record, I just need to say this. This is just a discussion only. There's no action
Correct.
item. So okay, so I'm gonna call on committee member Norton first, and then council members Sefa Dawson second. Go ahead.
Thank you, committee chair Tron. I'm a small business owner and I give bonuses to my employees. Some of my employees make twice as much an hour as other employees do. And I always give them the same bonus when I deliver them. And they're all happy with it. I know that I'm a small business and it's a different structure than a city or a police force, but when I give bonuses, or when I purchase, like I'll buy lunch, I get everybody the same thing. To me, it's more equitable. And I agree with Susan or with Deputy Mayor Honda that we should make it more equitable, because 2% of $50,000 a year is a lot less, or 2.5% is a lot less than 2.5% of $150,000 a year, and it's such a large it's such a gap. I'm just saying, as my employees are really happy, and I found that when you do things equally to show them that you appreciate all of them equally, it seems to build morale with the crew, and that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sefa Dawson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up, Deputy Mayor. And I do agree with what you both had said. And I think last week tabling it may not have been a wise idea, because staff were probably expecting a result or an answer. So I'm glad we're having this conversation now. So when we go to the table, our questions are answered, things are hashed out, and it's just to vote and not necessarily to have a lengthy conversation around this. And that way, then they would also know that we are very supportive of the work that they do, and that they're important to the city. The only question I have is, how much does this add to the budget when we're doing equal across board for all employees? And I don't know if you have that number, Susan or Council Deputy Mayor.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
If you have it, please. Yeah.
Well, so based on my math, which, could be checked by anyone. So I estimated that we'd have like 330 employees, and that would be $1,067 a year at $3,000 for the bonus. And then and that would be adding $500 for about 150 employees who could have been here longer than 5 years. And the way that I came up with the number of employees that could have been here for longer than 5 years, if in 2018, 19, 20, and 21, the numbers that we were given of employees who left the city's employment totaled 176 or 154, 176, I think. So that's how I came up with that. But I'd have anyone double check my numbers.
And a follow-up question to that, does that include our officers also?
It includes all staff. Well, I just put 330 as a Because we were told we had 320 some employees right now.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Committee member Jack Dovey.
Yeah, I guess I'll beg to differ with the discussion. I agree with what we've heard, that it's really important that we give incentives, and I too have many employees, and I found that when you buy lunch and give out small things and you're all the same, that's a good thing to do. But when you have a cross section of employees that are they're all very, very, very valuable, but some are in different positions. They're in management positions, they're in command positions, they're in lead positions. And if you make everybody the same, then, that's not, to me, the best way to do it. I think people need to be rewarded for where they're at. And I like the 2.5% across the board, because it's the same for everybody. It's the same percentage, and it's the same effect to their bottom line pay. And it's not a random number that we decide we think is the right number, because somebody on the lower side, if they got 3,000, they're going to be really, really excited. But somebody on the higher side only got 3,000. They're thinking, well, I didn't get what I should have got because I'm in a more valuable position or a different position. So I think trying to manage it by coming up with a number and across the board is not the way I would do it. I think that we need to come up with a percentage and across the whole staff, and everybody gets the same percentage, and then they're rewarded for retention based on what they're doing at the city. That's just my personal opinion. That's the way I think it should be done. But I know we need to do a retention, and we should make it very lucrative as we can for all our employees, because we want to keep them. But I don't think the same number for everybody across the board is the equitable way to do it.
Thank you for that comment. Council member Jack Walsh.
Yeah, I concur more with Councilmember Dovey. One of the things with this bonus is not just for appreciation. I mean, we absolutely appreciate them. I think we appreciate them all equally. But even in the name of what we're calling it, it's a retention bonus. And the purpose of it is to not just only show appreciation, but to retain the employees. And I believe that it would take more to retain a $100,000 employee that is worked here for a number of years and is thinking, hey, I would like to retire. Than what it would take to retain a new employee that's on the lower end of the scale, that has only worked here a few years. And so in order to achieve its purpose of retaining employees, I believe that it would make more sense to do it on a percentage basis, that 2.5%, rather than a flat amount, no matter what the employee is making. So that's where I'm coming from. We need to keep in mind the purpose of it is to retain. And that's my comments.
Committee member Norn, I see your hands up.
Thank you. I just want to add to what I was saying. A person who's making $100,000 a year is going to have a lot harder time finding a $100,000 job than a person who's making $50,000 a year. And the difference would be at 2.5% would be $1,000. So a person making $100,000 would get $2,500, and then the person, and then the $1,500 across the board. For someone who's making $100,000 a year, $2,500 is not going to be incentive for them to not retire or to go find another job. But for someone who's making $50,000 a year, I think that $1,500 would probably be more of an incentive for them to stay or go get another job somewhere else where they can stay at home. I'm just someone I've been in the $30,000 bracket, and now I'm, and my husband is someone who, and I'm not saying that I make that now. I'm just saying my husband is in a higher level position at his job, and he is in that $100,000 plus bracket at his job. And so what I see as incentives for them to stay is more of the morale. And I don't think, if my husband had a decision to make, or any of his cohorts, the management at the university, I don't think that $2,500 would make any difference, because it doesn't. It makes absolutely no difference at all. It's not that much money. And I don't, I think where we should be concerned the most is with the people who are doing the actual work and the physical labor at the facilities and at City Hall. Those are the people that we should be concerned about leaving and moving on, is because it's easier for them to leave than it would be for someone in a higher job capacity.
Also, member Asafar Dawson, I see your hands up.
Yep, and this time I do have a question.
Okay.
And this question is for Ryan. Can we actually give bonuses legally as a government entity, or does it have to match or be in a manner that it's either increased to the salary, or how? Yeah, I just need to understand the legal ramification when we call it a bonus. Yeah?
You can, yes.
You can.
So the issue with government pay is that we can't do retroactive pay. So if someone works an entire year, you can't at the end of the year say, you know what, you did such a great job, I'm going to pay you more. In that sense, a bonus is not allowed. But in this is a retention bonus, where we say, if you work prospectively for this next year, then at the end of that period, we will pay you a set amount of money. That's okay. You can also do performance pay, things like that, as long as you establish what the pay rate is going to be before the work is done.
So the language that we currently have is okay, is what I'm hearing you say. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We do. So one just a minor point. Deputy Mayor Honda talked about making it retroactive. We would never use the word retroactive. We would say employees hired after this certain date would be eligible, or we would define eligibility to be, in effect, not just people that were there for the first, or if you do a percentage, it's easier. You just prorate it. You just say, if you were there for 270 days of the year, you get 270% of what someone that was there for the whole year would have got.
Council President Kochma.
Well, I think you all have very valid ideas and very valid reasons for stating the way you think you are, the way you think. I'm wondering, Ryan, we have a certain amount of money that we're dealing with, right? 1.3 million, 1.35.
I believe that's what the proposal was. I honestly was not involved in developing it, so.
So
if
yeah,
we
it
want
was like
hard numbers, we'll have to come
700,000
back.
per year.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever we do, I just think we need to make sure that we keep it within that amount of money, whatever that is. I'm just wondering, Tran, what are you thinking?
I'm sorry?
Well, I'm just wondering what Chair Tran is thinking.
About the incentive?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know that at the last meeting, I was not in favor of the incentive. However, if I remember correctly, at the end of that meeting, I kind of changed my mind, and I'm willing to support the incentive payment. But I have a little bit different take on this, in that I know I'm not in favor of the 2.5% across the board. And the reason I want to fix that amount is very similar to what have been discussed today. But the way I look at it is that, if somebody making only $50,000, and we give them 2,500, that's a huge amount of money. That can make, I mean, that can help them a lot. That could mean, you know, more food for their children, you know, medical care for the kids, versus, you know, if I already make $150,000, and if you give me another 2,500, sure, it's a nice bonus, but you know, it's not gonna break or make me. I probably will spend that 2,500 on an extra trip to Hawaii. So, you know what I mean? So the amount of money that we give to the low-paying job um, people, I think it has more positive impact in their life. And that's how I see it. I see Deputy Mayor Honda hands up and committee members Dovey hands up.
Thank you. So the amount that was decided to spend on this was, according to the chief, what the council members that came to him suggested. So it's ARPA money, and we as a council can control where the ARPA money goes. So if we wanted to add a little bit more to it, we certainly could. I would think, unless I could be wrong, right, Brian?
No, absolutely you can. I just wanted to add one thing about the amount. There's a flaw in the calculations that the rest of the staff
that I gave you
noticed. No, that the chief put forward, and that is he was calculating a part-time employee based on 1,250, and that will exclude most of our part-time employees. The actual part-time number is lower than that. It's I think 1,050. This is what happens when things go through quickly. I think the chief and finance basically came up with this proposal, and HR and law were not involved. So if we're going to include all the regular part-time employees as was billed, I think it's going to be a higher number. It won't be significantly more, but it'll be more than the number that was proposed. We're going to fix that in the proposal.
Okay. Does staff have a proposal, Ryan? Because
I think the intent
I'm curious.
was talking to Brian. Brian had to check out, by the way. He stayed on for a very long time for FedRAC. He doesn't usually attend FedRAC, but he had a prior engagement. So I told him I would report back to him. But I think the intent was to listen to the discussion and then prepare alternatives that meet the factions that we hear. So if I hear, basically I'm hearing basically two types of proposals. We'll prepare two things to vote on.
Very good. Deputy Honda, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right, so we moving on to Mr. Dovey.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment and go back to what I understand this to be. It's a retention bonus. It's however to keep people working here and wanting to be part of Federal Way. So if we were to look at Deputy Mayor Honda's proposal of $3,000 or whatever that number is, I think it should be $5,000. And this is ARPA money. And if we decide that we want to retain our people, then we should be willing to spend a number that's enough that it's going to incent the people that are high paid and the people that are low paid. Because when you take it down to 3,000, you're penalizing our higher paid people and you're rewarding our lower paid people. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to retain people to work at our city. So I would just say we probably have some more discussions, but I wouldn't focus on that $3,000 number because I think that's a bogus number. It's going to insult the people that would be getting more. It's going to make the people happy that we're getting less. But if we're really going to do an incentive to keep retaining people, then we'd better think of a different type of number, because I think that we're making everybody equal, and the world's not equal. Everybody's got different talents. Everybody, we're focusing on these what people get paid. I think we're trying to retain talent, not give somebody money just because they work here. That's just my comment.
Council President.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Tran. So that was only my suggestion, was if you were going to come up with two different proposals, that we have a set amount for the second proposal, so that we're not discussing all over the board what that second number would be. So maybe Ryan and Steve Groom and Brian Davis could come up with a set number that would fit within the ARPA guidelines that we would be able to discuss.
So, Council President, I think we can set, as the Deputy Mayor pointed out, we could set this anywhere we want. My proposal would be, we'll price out 1 or 2 price points.
Okay.
And that way you can pick.
Great.
So maybe we'll have 3 options at several price points, and then also a percentage.
Okay. Thank you.
Work?
I do have a question for this group. Should there be some kind of language, because this is a retention bonus, should there be a language that said something about if they sign up to receive this bonus, they have to stay with us at least X number of months before they move on?
I thought it was through the end of the year.
So we actually aren't going to pay anyone any money till they've already done the work. So the retention is this next year they'll stay,
Sure.
and then we'll pay them at the end of the year, and then the next year, if they stay the whole year, in December we'll pay them that year again. So it is after the fact.
Okay.
And just as a matter of, just so you know, trying to get money back from employees after they've been paid is not a fun prospect.
It doesn't
to
happen.
be avoided.
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't work.
Got it.
We're not going to
Alright,
sue people over this. So
No. Okay. So is there anything else? Good discussion. I just want to make a real quick announcement for our next meeting. It is going to be on March 25th, 22 at 5 o'clock. And I would assume at this time it's going to be at City Hall.
Right.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
See ya.
See you on Saturday.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
All right.
Good night.